So welcome to part 2 of my synthesis tutorial series. So in this video we're going to look at the oscillators in more detail. If you are completely new to synthesis, then I would suggest going back and just watching part 1, which just sort of talks through all the different sections of a synth, just so you know your way around it a little bit. Right, so yeah, the oscillator. So this is the part of the synthesizer that actually generates the sound. So what we're going to look at in this tutorial is the different waveforms available to us and the sort of the different sounds that they make and create. So I'm going to use the spectrum device on this just so we can see what they look like. So I'm just going to put one of these on each of these channels. So I'll just do that and then I'll come back in a second. Right, okay, so I've got spectrum on here, so we can see more of a visual representation of the waveform, so we can sort of see what they look like and so on. You can also get, if you've not, I'm not sure whether Spectrum comes in all versions of Live or not, another plugin you can use is this one called Mexoscope, which does a similar sort of thing. I'll just drag it onto this track. So Spectrum, which I've got, which if you double click, normally it's like that. If you double click on it here, you can get the bigger display here. Okay, and then with this spectrum, if you turn your time right down, you can like boost the amp. Ooh, not that much. Okay, again, it will give you a representation. Spread it out a little bit more. So I'll try and leave. I'll probably leave both of those up actually, so you can see the shape of the thing here and down in there. So let's try and leave that there, and I'll copy that onto all the other tracks as well. Okay, I've got enough screen space, but there we go. Micro:bit is going to be on there. Right. Okay, so let's start with the sine wave. So we're going to use analog for this. So this is the sine wave, it's like the wavy one. So if we play it on here, what we want to look at is sort of two things really. Is the shape of the waveform, which is this bit here. Okay, so we can see it's kind of a sort of a smooth up and down sort of peak. Let me just take the amp down a little bit and turn the time right down. So get it to a decent size there, and I'll just freeze it so you can sort of see. Okay, so that's what a sine wave looks like. Okay, so it's like an up and down thing like this passing through the central 0 point here. If we look at the spectrum analyzer up here, we can get some more information. So the sine wave has quite a pure sound. On here we can see an obvious peak. Okay, so this bit here is our obvious sort of high, loudest point. So this is called the fundamental frequency, and it's the lowest frequency generated by the oscillation of the chosen waveform. So it's what our brains perceive to be the pitch of the note. Okay. So if we hover our mouse over here, we can see, when we look down here, okay, in this bottom corner here, it's telling us that that is a note of C2 at 130 Hertz, and it's minus 24.3 decibels. Okay, and I'm playing C2 on the keyboard. So it's going to give us a bit of information about the note that we're playing. Now, a pure sine wave, okay, wouldn't normally have all of these bits to the right-hand side of it. Okay, all these bits to the right-hand side are known as harmonics. Brighter, buzzier sounds that we'll look at later will generate more harmonics. Like I say, as I say, a pure sine wave wouldn't actually generate any upper harmonics, but as this is kind of like a digital thing, it's not a pure sine wave. I'm not sure if the electro's, I think it has got a sine wave, hasn't it? Yes. So there, let's have a look at the sine wave on the electro. Okay, let's just turn the amp down a bit. Okay, so let's just compare between the two. So that's the electro, and that's the analog. So they're both very similar. The electro seems to have quite a peak just here that the analog hasn't. That's got more of a smooth kind of drop off in the sounds down here. But anyway, there we go. Micro:bit's not got a sine wave, so we can't compare it on that one. So that's the sine wave. Like I say, very sort of pure, smooth kind of sound. Sawtooth. There's this one. Okay, so let's just unfreeze this so we can see. Okay, so that's the shape of the Sawtooth. So you can see it's a very different shape to the Sine Wave. So a Sawtooth is a much brighter, buzzier sound as it's got a load more harmonics in it. So if we look up here, okay, I'm going to leave that on so it freezes there. So there's the main fundamental note we can see is at C2. But whereas with the Sine Wave, these harmonics drop down very quickly like that, as you look with the Sawtooth, they don't drop down half as quick. So I can talk over time. You can see like that. Okay, they're not dropping down as much. If I just go back to the Sine Wave, okay, you can see you've got the main thing there, and then they drop down in quite a steep slope there. Okay, and then with the Sawtooth, okay, so we've got a lot of harmonics, and that's what gives it its louder, brighter, buzzier kind of sound. So it's how the harmonics kind of work that what defines the waveform's sound and shape. Let's have a look at the electro on the saw. Okay, so you can see we've got loud harmonics down here, we've got the Sawtooth thing down here. Must be some sort of envelope going on that. But again, similar sort of thing. Let's go over to the microbrew. Okay, so again, there's the main fundamental, dropping down, probably a little bit steeper than the others, but let's say every note is going to be, every synth is going to be slightly different depending on how the waveforms are created. Next up then, we've got the square wave or pulse wave, which, yes, analog has got one. This free. Okay, so there we can see the shape of the square wave. Again, very different shape. Now, this square wave has it's kind of similar to the Sawtooth, but it's got a hollower sound. Now, this is due to the fact that the square wave doesn't generate as many harmonics as the Sawtooth. It usually will only generate the odd harmonics, which gives it its more hollow sound. So if we try and compare, so there's the Sawtooth, and we'll put that on there and leave this thing up here. If we do then the square, actually no, that is the square. Hold on, let's change my settings. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we'll demonstrate this one on the electro. So I've now changed this is called pulse wave on here rather than square, okay, which is there. So if I play the saw, okay, so there's the Sawtooth. You can see all these harmonics here. If we switch that to the pulse, okay, hopefully you can see. Okay, it's missing some of these out, right? So I don't know why it's going up and down, but it is. So they're the odd harmonics. Okay, so it's sort of it's not got a harmonic there, and not a harmonic there, and so on, right? So it misses some out, which is why it gives it its hollower sound. Next up, again, I'm going to do this off the electro because the analog's not got a. Oh, hang on, sorry. Let me just go back to pulse. Pulse. Now, sometimes you'll have a dial called PW or pulse width modulation, and that's going to change the spacing between the peaks. Okay, so between these bits. So if I turn that dial while I play, you'll see it change. Sorry. That's a Sawtooth, you muppet. Right. What am I doing? Right, okay. I'm being ridiculously dense here because I'm changing oscillator 2 and it's oscillator 1. Right, let's try again and we'll get it right this time. Right. Okay, so you can see it's kind of making the main square bit. Okay, it's making this bit thinner until you get right the way up to the top. Then it makes it like this, like really thin. Okay, so you can see there's virtually nothing there. So if you bring it back down, okay, that's your pulse width. So it's basically the width of that that waveform. Let's do it on the micro brute. So as you saw, if we go on to the square, okay, as you can see, it's a very, very pure wave on here on this analog synth. So if you change the pulse width on here, which is this dial here, you'll see it change shape. Okay, so as it gets wider, okay, so hopefully that gives you a bit more info on pulse width. Right, let's go back to the electro then. So we were onto the triangle wave. So triangle wave is very similar to the pulse width or the square. Okay, it's still got that kind of harmonic, sorry, that hollow kind of feel, but let's just have a look at the shape of it. Freeze it. Okay, so you can see it's now a triangle shape, amazingly enough, because it's a triangle waveform. But what happens with the triangle wave is the harmonics reduce in volume a lot faster than the square wave, which results in it's still got that hollow kind of feel, but a duller sort of sound compared to the square. So you can see they're kind of dropping down like that. Let's do it from the micro brute again. So there's the square wave. Okay, and there's the triangle wave, so you can see the shape down there. So if you look at the harmonics, you can see we've got the main fundamental here, but these are a lot quieter. We'll go back to the square. Okay, so the square's going up there. So that's left the square wave there. Okay, now we'll bring the triangle in. Okay, so you can see these peaks aren't reaching anywhere as high as these. Okay, so that's what gives it its duller sound. It's kind of like a hollow, dull sort of sound. A couple of other things that we might then get in the oscillator section. We'll do analog for this one. Over on here, we've got this looks like a random waveform, which is basically what it is. It's a random waveform. It's called a noise. So this is great for percussion sounds. So it just sort of makes a noise like that. So there's no real fundamental frequency with this. It's generally wherever you play up on the keyboard, it's not sort of doesn't sort of respond to pitch. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, so yeah, it's a horrible noise. So that's what it just looks like, a scrambled kind of mess like that. So if I play up and down, okay, so it like I say, doesn't respond to pitch. Again, very, very useful for like snare drum sounds, percussion sounds. To mix, you can mix those in with others. Obviously, if you've got two oscillators, you could have like a square wave down here and a noise on here, and mix the two together. We could do the same on the electro here, because I've got two oscillators. You can also on the micro brute, even though this is only a one oscillator synth, but you can mix the different waveforms together using those using the volume dials here. And the last one is you might often get one that's called sub oscillator, which I don't think, if I remember rightly, analog's not got. The electro has and the micro brute has. So here you can see we've got the this is the sub oscillator, where you can change the pitch of it. Basically what happens with a sub is this produces a second waveform an octave below the original waveform, so it gives it more bottom end, so great for kind of sub bass sounds. So if I play, we'll do the saw for this. So there's the saw. If I bring in oscillator 3, okay, which is the sub, I'm going to try and do this if I can. I'll do it off here. Okay, so hopefully you can hear that bass now coming in. Okay, so without the sub oscillator, it's that thin sort of sound. Bring that sub in. Okay, and you can change the tuning. Depending on where you want it. Okay, micro brute's got a similar setting on it. Okay, we'll go with the square wave. With the Sawtooth, and it's this one here, which is called overtone, and you can have this as either a sub oscillator, which will bring it in, which will put kind of create another waveform an octave below, or you can go fifths, which will do it kind of a fifth up. But if I bring this up, okay, so that's it without, bring that sub in. Okay, and if again this is specific to the microgroup, but we can mix that in with. We can have another oscillator, kind of like a fifth above, which gives it a very rich sort of sound. So let's just go back to. In fact, I'm going to do it on analog on the sine wave because it's not got as many harmonics. So what you'll notice is, as we play up and down the keyboard, you'll see that the frequency fundamental changes, right? So there's C2. If I go up to C3, you can see the fundamental has now moved up. C4 is up there. Okay, so if I go up like an octave, you'll see it kind of step up. Okay, so it's stepping up each time. So basically what happens is pitch is related to frequency. And the frequency of a wave is basically the number of times, or the number of waves passing a point in a certain time. And it's usually measured in the time of 1 second, so it gives it a frequency unit of hertz. So since 1 hertz is equal to 1 wave per second. Okay, so that's the sciencey bit behind it. So basically what happens is when the pitch goes up an octave, the frequency of the fundamental doubles, right? So C2 here, we can see we've got a frequency of 129 hertz. If we go an octave up, that's going to double to 260. Actually, should probably be on 130 just to round it up. So 130 hertz, okay, for C2. We're going up an octave. That's going to be now at 260 hertz. So it's basically the waveforms moving faster. If we bring the smexoscope up, you will see what I mean. Okay, so they're closer together. If we go higher up, the waves are going to be even closer together. Lower down, they're more spaced out. Lower down, even more spaced out. Okay, so that is the frequency, right? So it's how many times that waveform kind of cycles round based on that time measurement. Hopefully that makes sense. It's easier when you can see it. So obviously when we go down an octave, it halves the frequency. So if we start here at 130, which is the C2, if we go down to C1, it will be half of 130, which, if my maths is correct, will be 75. Somewhere there. Hang on. C1. Well, let's say in 65. Is that right? That is right. Yeah, my maths was wrong. 75 would be 150. 65 is half of 130. Yeah, okay. Whatever. Don't judge me for my maths. Right. So that's basically kind of pretty much all you need to know about oscillators. That's covered all the different types that you're going to get. So like I say, some synths will have all of them, some will have fewer, and so on. So next section then, we're going to look at the filter in more detail, which is the bit that really starts to kind of help shape the sound and where we can get all those cool sounding synth effects from. So thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, leave me any comments or questions in the box below. And I'll do my best to answer any of those. If you don't mind watching a few adverts, please do that, because it gives me a bit of income then from this channel to help me keep it going. Or go on and play my music a million times on Spotify and give me like 0.001 pence per whatever 1,000 streams they pay me. And so on. Yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.